Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich has made his fair share of enemies on his way to propelling the band to become one of the most commercially successful in history. So today, we're going to be going through some of his most unforgettable clashes, from the ones that tarnished his legacy to the ones where he had the last laugh, starting with Dave Mustaine, whose feud with Ulrich is arguably the most bitter in heavy metal history. Mustaine joined Metallica in 1981 and co-wrote many of the band's earliest songs. Unfortunately, his songwriting talents were soon overshadowed by his escalating alcoholism, which led to frequent violent outbursts. These incidents ultimately forced his bandmates to decide it was time to let him go. And so, as the members of Metallica traveled from California to New York to record their debut album, they woke Mustaine after a night of heavy drinking to deliver the news that he was officially being fired. The band then packed up Mustaine's gear and dumped the hungover guitarist at a bus station with a one-way ticket back to Los Angeles, quickly replacing him with guitarist Kirk Hammett the very same afternoon. Further adding insult to injury, Metallica subsequently attempted to erase Mustaine's contributions, telling the press he was merely a temporary member and disparaging him as a loser and a drunk. Driven by revenge, Mustaine went on to form rival band Megadeth, which to his credit has sold over 50 million albums worldwide. However, to this day, Mustaine remains haunted by his dismissal from Metallica, harboring a very public bitterness towards Ulrich in particular. Mustaine finally had the chance to confront Ulrich in Metallica's 2004 documentary, where he candidly revealed on camera that he has always felt second best to Metallica and still resents the way he was fired.
Do you have any idea
Of what I put you through?
No. What I went through? I mean, people hate me because of you.
You know, I walk down the street and I hear some piece of shit say Metallica at me, and they do that to taunt me. I mean, when I would hear Metallica on the radio, I would be like, God, I have to turn this off because I just keep thinking, I up.
After their conversation, Mustaine expressed feeling used by Ulrich, believing that the discussion was more about advancing Ulrich's career at his expense rather than fostering healing. Consequently, the relationship between the two showed no signs of improvement. Their feud resurfaced in 2021 when Metallica hoped to delight fans by re-releasing a special edition of their 1982 demo tape, No Life Till Leather, which featured Dave Mustaine on guitar. Unfortunately, the negotiations between Mustaine and Metallica over publishing credits broke down when Ulrich allegedly sought songwriting credit for songs that Mustaine had written, halting the re-release and keeping it from seeing the light of day. Mustaine would comment on the dispute in an interview with Rock Hard magazine, stating, "I could not willingly enter into a new agreement with these guys predicated on Lars getting credit for my songs. I'm not afraid of Lars Ulrich, and I'm not giving him my percentage." Yet Mustaine is not the only musician that missed out on rock and roll stardom after clashing with Ulrich, as founding Metallica bassist Ron McGovney also had a notoriously strained relationship with the drummer. In an interview with MetallicaWorld.co.uk, McGovney revealed his initial hesitation to join Metallica, citing his belief that Ulrich was the worst drummer he had ever heard. Despite his reservations, McGovney joined the band, but soon found himself in frequent conflicts with Ulrich, whom he felt was taking advantage of him. According to McGovney, he was expected to cover the band's expenses out of his own pocket without reimbursement, and was often pressured into chauffeuring Ulrich around town. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to McGovney, Metallica was secretly negotiating with bassist Cliff Burton to replace him. Eventually, the band initiated a campaign of harassment to pressure McGovney into quitting, which he ultimately did in 1982. As Metallica's career progressed, Ulrich often butted heads with producers in the studio while recording the band's early albums. Producer Flemming Rasmussen has openly criticized Ulrich for his inability to play on beat, even branding him absolutely useless. When the band hit the studio to record their fourth album, titled And Justice for All, Ulrich would completely take over the mixing process, forcing forcing sound engineer Steve Thompson to make the bass guitar virtually inaudible in the mix. Panicked by the thought of being associated with such a horribly engineered album, Thompson would even try to quit the project, but was prevented from doing so by the band's management. The resulting album, with its harsh and dry sound, faced criticism from both fans and music journalists, and Metallica frontman James Hetfield would later admit that the album would have benefited from a mix different from the one Ulrich forced upon them. Ulrich's overbearing control of the band might explain the rumors that began circulating in the 80s about Metallica planning to get rid of Lars Ulrich. According to Anthrax guitarist Scott Ian, Metallica's Cliff Burton and Kirk Hammett confided in him about their plans to dismiss Ulrich in 1986. Citing creative and professional differences, Metallica reportedly intended to fire their drummer as soon as they returned to the US after completing their European tour, even if it meant losing the rights to the Metallica name, which Ulrich held. However, this plan changed dramatically following Cliff Burton's untimely death during that very same tour, with the band ultimately deciding to keep Ulrich in the lineup to avoid losing two core members in quick succession. Bassist Jason Newsted was then recruited to fill the spot left vacant by Burton's passing. So with Ulrich still on drums, Metallica entered the 90s, poised to become the biggest band in rock music with the release of the critically acclaimed and best-selling The Black Album. However, there was just one problem. The rock scene was being dominated by Guns N' Roses, who were not about to give up their throne without a fight, setting the stage for an intense battle for musical supremacy. According to Guns N' Roses drummer Matt Sorum, a clash between Ulrich and GNR frontman Axl Rose was inevitable due to their ambitious natures. Sorum noted, Axl's intention was to rule the world, and he wasn't afraid to say it. Then Lars Ulrich came along and he wanted to rule the world. They were very competitive with us. In 1992, Ulrich proposed an innovative idea. The two larger-than-life bands should join forces for a massive and undoubtedly lucrative co-headlining tour. Both bands quickly agreed, but the arrangement was far from smooth. Despite being the younger band, Guns N' Roses demanded to close each show, a condition to which Metallica eventually gave into. The resulting tour was fraught with drama, marked by numerous cancellations, and even a notorious riot in Montreal that was largely blamed on Axl Rose. By the time the tour concluded, Metallica and Guns N' Roses had become bitter enemies, with Axl even accusing Ulrich of stealing ideas from him during an onstage rant in 1993.
Lars don't give a shit. Motherfucker calls me at 4 in the morning trying to kiss my ass or something. It's like, but I can't trust the motherfucker. Like the time that we sat around writing a video for Don't Cry and we talked about being underwater and showing all these things, and then Lars runs home and writes a video. And the cool thing about it is, he copped to it. Yeah, I was ripping you guys off.
Lars would continue making enemies in the music industry later that year with the release of Metallica's music video for their hit song, Nothing Else Matters, which features a clip of Ulrich throwing darts at a picture of rock singer Kip Winger. This would inadvertently cause tremendous damage to Winger's reputation, swiftly turning Winger into a laughingstock in pop culture. The popular show Beavis and Butthead would even feature a wimpy character named Stuart Stevenson, who infamously wore a Winger t-shirt. Decades later, Winger would reveal that the backlash nearly ruined his career, adding that Ulrich never apologized to him for the stunt. Ulrich's path of destruction continued with the release of Metallica's 1996 double album, Load and Reload, a time which saw Ulrich seizing total control of the band's image. The group's iconic long hair and leather vests, which had defined their visual aesthetic for the past 15 years, were now a thing of the past. In their place were neat haircuts, makeup, and dressing in drag. These changes were instantly met with disapproval from most of Metallica's fan base, and even from some within the band itself. In fact, this era of the band's history marked the first time Ulrich and Metallica co-founder James Hetfield publicly disagreed on the band's direction. Hetfield openly voiced his reservations about Ulrich's vision, disparagingly referring to it as the U2 version of Metallica. Bassist Jason Newsted also expressed doubts about the group's new direction, with these disagreements within Metallica setting the stage for what would soon escalate into full-blown resentment among the band members. Just as the band was scheduled to return to the studio to record a follow-up to Load and Reload, internal relationships hit rock bottom. This tension reached its peak when Jason Newsted made the shocking announcement on January 17, 2001, that he had quit Metallica. Though Newsted initially claimed he was leaving the band due to, quote, private and personal reasons and the physical damage I have done to myself, he revealed in a 2022 interview with Metal Hammer that his departure from Metallica actually stemmed from an argument between himself and Lars Ulrich. According to Newsted, it all started when Ulrich discovered that Newsted was working on other musical projects while Metallica was on a break, with Ulrich subsequently calling for a band meeting specifically to reprimand the bassist. Newsted recalled, "The guys got wind of it, and Lars said, 'You gotta come up to the house.' I didn't really know what it was for, so I take my bass and go up there." Lars says, "Dude, you know you're in Metallica now, don't you? You can't just be making music and sending out tapes to whatever with whichever you do understand that, right?" Newsted admits that he felt utterly humiliated after the exchange, believing that both Lars and frontman James Hetfield were stifling his creativity, which ultimately led to his decision to resign from the band. In an interview with MTV News, he stated, "Metallica has two control freaks, and it's very hard to get any kind of 2 cents in that monopoly." Yet despite the seemingly unshakable strength of Metallica's leadership, Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield soon faced a significant falling out. Newsted's exit from the band would prove to have lasting consequences in the days and weeks that followed. The band's subsequent recording sessions were riddled with tension, ultimately leading to a heated argument between Ulrich and Hetfield that had unintended yet significant repercussions.
You're just sitting here being a complete d***.
And what have you been doing? Picking at me all night.
Following the argument, Hetfield would check into rehab to undergo treatment for alcoholism and other addictions, putting the album on hold and casting uncertainty over the band's future. This period of the band's career would be documented in the film Some Kind of Monster, which highlighted the band's internal conflicts, with Ulrich frequently at the center of the turmoil.
I just think you're so fucking self-absorbed.
Yet Ulrich's most publicized controversy came in the year 2000, when the drummer spearheaded the case against the peer-to-peer file-sharing service Napster, in which Metallica filed lawsuits against the service for distributing their copyright-protected material without consent. The band went so far as to monitor Napster's web traffic to track users who were allegedly sharing unauthorized MP3s of Metallica's songs, with Ulrich personally delivering a truckload of paper to Napster's headquarters, listing hundreds of thousands of individuals accused of using the software to illegally download his music. The Napster lawsuit sparked backlash from fans and fellow rock musicians alike, painting Ulrich as an out-of-touch millionaire quibbling over pennies.
I don't want to turn on my radio and have to put a nickel in it to hear Metallica. When it's someone that sold 50 million records and they got 50 million dollars and they're bitching about pennies, you, man.
As a way to combat the problem of internet-based copyright infringement, the Recording Industry Association of America would subsequently file lawsuits of their own against individual consumers, with the first settlement coming in September of 2003 against a 12-year-old girl who was ordered to pay $2,000 to resolve the case. Due to Lars Ulrich's early involvement in the legal battle against peer-to-peer file-sharing services, Metallica often mistakenly received blame for these heavy-handed lawsuits. Since then, Metallica's career has surged forward, with the band overcoming the Napster controversy and consistently releasing hit albums while headlining stadiums worldwide. However, Lars has admitted that he personally continues to grapple with the fallout from the Napster dispute, a burden he expects to carry to his grave.
I'd say in every 5th interview I do these days, there's a Napster 3-minute conversation in there. I mean, it's as you know, it's like it'll be part of my obituary. In my life, it's a footnote, but in some people's perception of who I am and what Metallica is, I understand that it's a big thing, and I accept that.